Well, as mentioned, there is a lot of political news in America today. With the Congress, the Iraqi parliament, and the Prime Minister of France all on vacation, the politicians who would be our next president have picked up the pace and heightened the intensity of their pursuit. The Democrats are in Chicago Saturday before the left-wing blogger convention known as the Yearly Kos. The Republicans, meanwhile, debated yesterday afternoon in Iowa. The most compelling confrontation at the Yearly Kos wasn't between any of the candidates, but between frontrunner Hillary Clinton and the nearly unanimously anti-war conventioneers. And the most dramatic moment didn't involve the war, surprisingly. Instead, it focused on the role of lobbyists in the political process. Here's what Mrs. Clinton said.
A lot of those lobbyists, whether you like it or not, represent real Americans. They actually do. They represent nurses. They represent, social workers. They represent, they represent corporations that employ a lot of people. So, the idea that somehow a contribution is going to influence you, I just ask you to look at my record. I have been fighting for the same things. My core principles have not changed. But I do want to be the president for everybody. And I want to represent the entire country, and that is what I'm aiming to do in my campaign.
Man, if there's a more unpopular thing to say at the Daily Kos convention, I don't know what it is. Meanwhile, in Iowa, the Republicans mainly bashed the Democrats rather than one another. The biggest news probably was Mitt Romney. He's the current frontrunner in that state. Mr. Romney has either earned or been unfairly strapped with the label of flip-flopper. That depends on your point of view. In the debate's most significant moment, he addressed his evolving position on abortion. Here's part of what he said.
You can go back to YouTube and look at what I said in 1994. I never said I was pro-choice, but my position was effectively pro-choice. I've said that time and time again. I changed my position.
So who came out ahead in each candidate's gathering, and what should we expect this week from the debates among the Democrats at the AFL-CIO convention and the Human Rights Campaign, and also from the Republicans, most of whom are stumping in Iowa? Joining me now with his insights is a man who once lived his own campaign, NBC News political analyst and former presidential candidate, Pat Buchanan. Welcome, Pat.
Hey, Tucker, how are you?
I never thought I would say this, but I mean this with all sincerity. I was completely impressed by Hillary Clinton.
I thought it was a terrific answer.
What a brave thing to say.
You're right. It was her sister soldier moment to those folks. The left-wing bloggers were all attacking every lobbyist as evil. And she said, look, a lot of them work for good causes and are good people. I'm going to be president of all the people. I think that stands very well for her in the general election. That's what she's running for.
I mean, short of endorsing the war, which I guess she's done time and time again throughout the past 5 years, you couldn't really say anything more offensive to the people gathered at that group than, I'm here to represent lobbyists as well, and they have a right to express their opinions too, just as you do.
That is a self-righteous crowd. The bloggers, ideologically hard left types, pure, and so they all booed her. I think it helps her. I think when people see her standing up like that, and she's booed by people, and she takes a position that's quite reasonable, intelligent, I think it helps her.
God,
it's
certainly, I must say, I've never watched Hillary Clinton speak and thought, I admire that.
Exactly.
And I admire anybody with the courage to look right into the eyes of a group you're supposed to be pandering to and say the most unpopular thing you possibly can.
Fundamentally, I disagree basically with you, and here's why, and these are good folks, even if you don't like them. I credit her
Well, I hope they're adults enough to respect her for that. Mitt Romney did a maybe less dramatic, but I thought significant version of the same thing when he said to George Stephanopoulos and to Sam Brownback, with whom he was arguing at the time, I was effectively pro-choice, and I changed my position. I mean, I can't really think of a better answer. It's hard to call him a flip-flopper if he concedes that he changed his mind, isn't it?
Well, he said I flipped and flopped.
Yeah.
But he changed my mind. You're right. But Romney's problem is this. Brownback has been savaging him with these push polls, these phone calls on his position on abortion to strip away any Christian support he's got in order to draw down Romney to the point where he doesn't have a dramatic victory in the straw poll, which will really cause some air to go out of that balloon if it happens. And Brownback is shooting hard for second out there, Tucker, so he can move into the top tier or near the top tier, and he's been very rough on. He's been rough on Tancredo and very rough on Romney.
Well, Tancredo, I have to say, came out with, not surprisingly, Tancredo, for whom I believe your sister is working, and Tancredo, a guy I really like, who's on the show.
She's having foreign policy.
Yes, she is. Tancredo's foreign policy comes down to bombing Mecca and Medina.
He's threatened to bomb them.
He's threatened to it. And so Stephanopoulos asked him, he said, you said you'd bomb the holy cities, and the State Department calls that reprehensible and, quote, absolutely crazy, to which Tancredo says, the State Department says it's crazy, it must be pretty good. And then he says, anybody who's running for president who would take that option off the table isn't fit to be president. To which, that option being bombing Mecca and Medina, to which the audience applauded.
Welcome to the Iowa straw poll.
Yes.
Well, one thing they did, he was set up perfectly when they said the State Department doesn't like what you said. So, but you know, I'll tell you, but Duncan Hunter came out. Was it no? Duncan Hunter said the Pakistan thing. I guess he disagreed on that. But you know, Tancredo's got a little bit of a tough spot there. It's like hitting, you know, the Irish Republican Army's Catholic and they're attacking people in London. So you put one on top of the Vatican City.
I mean, look, if I think it goes too far, that tells you how far it goes. You know what I mean?
But I'll give Tancredo credit, and he said this before, and he came out and he did make a very good point. He said, look, you don't take any sort of threats off the table and things like that, but I also think it's probably unwise you make a public threat, we're going to take out Mecca and Medina. I mean, that's a Salman Rushdie moment.
Yes, I still love Tom Tancredo. I mean, focus on old Tancredo.
He's a wonderful guy.
A very telling moment. All the candidates were asked, what's your biggest mistake? Tancredo said he became a Christian too late. Huckabee said he let himself get fat. McCain said he volunteered to fly over North Vietnam. Romney said he was pro-choice. Rudy refused to answer, essentially, saying, you know, I will confess that to a priest.
Well, he also said, look, you've only given me 30 seconds here.
Was that good enough?
Yeah, I thought Rudy's was funny. That's the way to deal with it.
It was?
Sure. I mean, that's what, it's a good way to deal with it rather than some of these things are pretty unctuous, you know. And
pretty unctuous. But Sam Brownback said, quote, probably not telling my wife and kids and parents that I love them enough. If that's your biggest sin.
Okay.
What about my favorite was
this guy's headed for sainthood.
Ron Paul said, I haven't fought hard enough for liberty. If Ron Paul hasn't fought hard enough for liberty, what hope is there for you and me?
There's none. Listen, there's none for the rest of us, I'll tell you. Guy's got the greatest voting record ever held in the Congress.
Amazing.
On cutting spending. He's wonderful, though. I will say this about Paul, too. And Duncan Hunter, I think they're all getting better, but I will say this about Ron Paul. He's got a superior stage presence to what he had early on, you know. I think these guys have all been, you know, they've been scrimmaging. Now they're ready for the game. They're much better than they were, you know, back in the winter.
It changes you doing it.
It changes you.
As, of course, you well know. Pat Buchanan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tuck.